Got a single match here for you that I figured I would run through. I thought it was a decent one. Um, just a tournament practice room game. Um, so we'll jump right in. Let's see. So this hand is pretty reasonable. I'm gonna pause for a second. I'm on the draw. This hand's pretty reasonable. I got cantrips. I got a business spell. I got access to both my colors as basic lands if I want. Both my colors as basic lands if I want. So that's all good. They lead off on Windswept Heath, so it's looking like some kind of Mavericky type deck right off the bat. So I get the basic Swamp and Thoughtseize. And you can see it went by a little fast, but they didn't have a whole lot. They had Wasteland and Dark Depths and Loam. So I don't need to expose any non-basics just yet, so the Wastelands aren't doing anything. So based on their hand right now, their plan is likely going to be try to loam into a Thespian Stage so that they can make Dark Depths around turn 4 or so would be the earliest they could do it. Anyway, so for their turn they just fetch and play loam, I believe. Yep, and just grab their thing back so they can start loaming. Play the snow-covered island and cantrip. And I think I bought them both of those because I'm really just looking for a dark writ at this point, or drawing a dark writ would win me the game. They didn't loam, which was interesting, and that probably means that. So I want to pause for a second. They didn't loam, and drawing the dark writ there probably means. Sorry, they didn't loam, which means that probably one of their draw the previous turn, the turn they cast the loam, was like a Thespian Stage or something along those lines, something that would make them not want to loam for whatever reason. And they would rather just take their draws and try to draw something that could interact with me. So they have something good. Now, so I say I'm going to make them have it, and I make a pass turn pile here. And it's a very basic pass turn pile. I have a lot of mana, so I just make cantrip, act on impulse, and Jace. The one thing that I didn't do here that I could have done was try to fit since I have so much mana, try to fit what the fuck's it called, Collective Brutality into my pile somewhere. Say crop rotation for the waste or for the Thespian Stage, so the crop rod's likely what they drew. And unfortunately, I get a little shafted here because they also just drew Green Sun Zenith. And so the turn before I would have won, they Green Sun Zenith for Gaddock Teeg. Now I can't cast my Jace, and I don't have a way to kill the Teeg in my pile, which is kind of what I was alluding to just now. Is if I had put Collective Brutality into my pile, I could have had an out to the Teeg. Although it would have been too slow because they also had the Thespian Stage in this situation. If they didn't also have that, then it's a possibility. But anyway, so I lost game 1. So we'll jump to game 2. For sideboarding in a matchup like this is the one thing about these replays that you can't really see how I sideboarded. Generally, I'm going to be cutting at least one Frenzy in the taxing matchups, and like kind of aggro type matchups. Frenzy isn't as great because you don't have a ton of time to set it up. So unless you get a very fast Frenzy down and kind of just go off with it, it's not as good. So I cut one Frenzy, I cut the 2 Duresses, and I usually am going to cut like a Preordain probably for Fatal Pushes and Abrades. And I think I also brought in Echoing Truth here, so I probably cut a second. I tend to cut Limdul's Vaults in this matchup because they can be expensive, especially if you're trying to cast them under a taxing effect, and they cost a lot of life, so they're another card that's not so great in the aggressive matchups. So that kind of gives you an idea of what I did for sideboarding. So this hand is okay. I decided to keep it. It's got a lot of lands and it's got an Abrade, so it can interact a little bit, and I basically can just hope to draw a little bit more mana to get the Frenzy down and kill whatever Hate Bearer or whatever they play. So I just play out my land and an LED, and I pass turn. And Leyline, it's worth noting that Leyline does very, very little here. I'll play my other land. Here I'm going to get the basic island and just play the Preordain. And I found the Lotus Petal, which is good, and I'm just going to play that out. So now I'll have the mana to cast one of these Frenzies. Oops, I didn't need to click OK there. I didn't need to. So there's a thorn. Fortunately, I have the abrade to deal with that. And I drew a fatal push, which is nice in case they have something else to try to fuck with me. So here you'll see, I believe they play Gaddock Teeg. Yep, so they had the Gaddock Teeg in hand, which is fine. So I'm going to abrade the thorn now, I believe. Yep. And then I'll untap, and I drew a Cabal Writ, which is great. So I can Cabal Writ, Fatal Push the Teeg, and then still have enough mana left over to cast the Frenzy. And with Frenzy down, it's basically just becomes, can I win the game before they play anything else that can tax me? And the answer, as it turns out, is yes. So we'll just watch real quick here, but it pretty quickly becomes, or elementary is a good word for it. So I get hit Doomsday and Abrade, so I can kill their Elvish Reclaimer and have enough mana left over to Doomsday. And it's kind of just, that's just game from there. They don't have anything. I think I might, yeah, I put a Thoughtseize in the pile, which is just good form, although I put the pile in reverse order. But I Thoughtseize them. I see they just have nothing, basically. It's like lands, I think. So anyway, that's how that game worked. So that went pretty well. I drew interaction to be able to 1-for-1 both pieces of hate that they played. So the third game is a little more interesting. Again, this hand's pretty good. I have access to my 2 colors of mana. I have a discard spell to be able to get whatever 2-drop they might have if they can't play anything on turn 1. And I have a way to interact with something that hits the board. It's worth noting at this point that I haven't seen any mana acceleration that could play something on turn 2. I mean, play a 2-drop on turn 1. It's not unreasonable to expect that they have Mox Diamond, which, as you can see, they have it here, and they play a Thorn, which is okay. I have a solution to the Thorn, so I'm just going to play out my lands, basically trying to hit my land drops, find a way to kill the Thorn. They didn't play anything there, so I drew that. Here I'm going to get the basic swamp, and I'll actually just preordain here. Oh no, I Thoughtseized. Hold on a second. That is the right play because I have enough mana where I can potentially try to, or I have Rituals, Doomsday, and a cantrip, so I'm pretty close to winning with Doomsday once I can get the Thorn off the board. So the Thoughtseize makes the most sense there, especially because last turn they flashed, like they tapped some mana and then untapped it and didn't cast anything because they couldn't cast these cards. Now, I take the Green Sun Zenith because I don't want them to be able to get Teeg at any point if I can avoid that. And the choke is okay because they're not going to be able to play it next turn. It costs 4 mana. So they play a Plateau and pass the turn. I play Delta and pass. And now I'm at the point where if they don't draw another mana source, I can just win. I'll bounce the Thorn on my end step, or their end step, and then I'll just double cantrip pile them. So I'm feeling pretty good here. I'm in a good spot. Unfortunately, I believe they do in fact find a Wasteland, which is double bad. So I'm going to have to pass the turn again. Now, the reason I can't Echoing Truth right here is because I need all of this mana to cast Echoing Truth. I need at least 1 blue mana to be able to kill next turn. So if this got a Badlands, this would untap, but this wouldn't, and I wouldn't have enough blue mana. And if this got an Underground Sea, it wouldn't untap. So basically the choke is doing its job, choking me. So I have to pass, but at this point there's not a good... Now, the Underground Sea is another very interesting draw. There's no reason for me to try to do anything right there. My Polluted Delta isn't exposing any non-basic lands to the Wasteland. The Underground Sea is a good draw, though, because it means that if they waste it, I can spend the mana to bounce the Thorn, or even maybe just Brainstorm in response. And it's fine. I'm going to lose the blue mana to choke or Wasteland anyway. So the sea is a decent draw there. So we'll go through here. Now, I really get shafted here, I think it was here, because they ripped Another Green Sun Zenith, if I remember correctly. Yep. So naturally, they're Green Sun Zenith for Teague, which is a big problem. So got Thorn, Choke, and Teague to try to play through. So we'll go a little slower here. Oops, I clicked the wrong button. Okay. So I went, because they tapped out, I went and I fetched the Badlands here. Oh, sorry. It looks like I did bounce I bounced the Thorn on their end step, and I fetched the Badlands there. So I must have used the the Badlands and the Swamp to bounce the Thorn. So I'm in a position now where I need I'm not quite there yet. Like they're not quite dead yet. If I could get this Cabalra to Threshold, they'd be pretty dead. If I could get the Teague off the table, I'll need to get the Teague off the table basically, or I need to just find a discard spell so I can take the Thorn, and then that'll give me a little bit more time to try to deal with their other things. So let's see what I draw here. I believe it's a fetch land. So let's think this through. Fetch land puts me to 5 cards in my graveyard. Dark Ritual put me to 6 cards in my graveyard. If I cast one of the cantrips, that's going to put me up to 7 cards in my graveyard, so I can get the Threshold for the Cabal Writ. I honestly can't remember what I did here. I played this game yesterday, so maybe I should have watched through this before I recorded this. But anyway, let's just see what happens. We'll go through slow. So I start by playing the fetch land, and I just crack it, I believe. Actually, it looks like I'm playing one of my cantrips. Nope, cracking the fetch land. Clearly decided not to crack or play a cantrip. So I go and I get the Underground Sea. Now I believe I play a cantrip. So I preordain, and I preordain into 2 lands, which I bottom both. I draw another preordain. And actually the second preordain is really good. So now I can win. And I'm going to pause for just a second to let y'all think about how that might happen, because I do need to get this Teague off the table to be able to play either a Frenzy or a Jace. So we'll step through here. So I start with Dark Writ to put me to Threshold. Then I play Cabal Writ. So I'll have 6 black mana. Cast Doomsday. And we'll get this nice and big so y'all can see. First card I grab is going to be Act on Impulse, I think. Oh no, Jace. That's fine. So I grab the Jace. Obviously that's how we're going to win the game, so that's important. Then next card I grab is a Lion's Eye Diamond. We're going to need one of those for sure. The next card is another Lion's Eye Diamond. And then the Act on Impulse, I think. Yep, so then the Act on Impulse. And now I need a way to get the Teague off the table, so the last card is going to be Fatal Push. So those are my 5 cards. And if you think about it for a minute, it probably becomes clear what the plan is here. But hopefully it'll pile correctly. So because the replays sometimes mess up the order of the Doomsday pile, I'll just spell it out here. Jace on the bottom, and then you need LED, and then LED, Fatal Push, Act on Impulse. So the order of those top 3 cards doesn't matter that much because we're going to be brainstorming into it. But what you do here is you'll brainstorm, you'll draw Act, LED, Fatal Push. You put back LED and your preordain, so your hand will be Act on Impulse and Fatal Push. And at that point you'll have 3 black and 1 Badlands up, so you'll have just enough mana to push the Teague and Act on Impulse into LED preordain. And then you can make a bunch of blue mana, draw the Jace, and win the game. So we'll see that play out here. It looks like it's putting it in the wrong order. I brainstorm and the order's all messed up, so you won't be able to see it, but that's basically how that game would work out. I wish I knew under what circumstances it worked correctly. The replays worked correctly. But anyway, that's the pile there. So had enough mana to be able to get the Teague off the table and to be able to play the Jace, which should be in the deck. So we were able to beat Teague, Thorn, and Choke in that game, which, if you ask me, is pretty fucking sick. Thanks for watching.